What is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to Just Ballin' for another NBA draft type episode. Today, I want to talk about some sleepers leading up to the 2025 NBA draft. Guys that haven't really been considered in the consensus first round, or maybe even top 45, or potentially the top 60 for this upcoming NBA draft. And some of these guys we're about to watch throughout conference tournament play. Some of the final games they're going to play this season, either of the collegiate careers or just this season for their specific team. And then guys that are going to be also playing during the March Madness tournament. Guys already punched their ticket going in, or they could end up winning their conference tournament and get a bid that way. Some of these guys are also on the bubble as well. And yeah, I think a little bit more than 10 that I want to go through and just kind of give my thoughts on these players as they've either gone on my radar all year or just as of late. And I think these are players that are just really fun college players at the moment, but you're trying to project them into the NBA level side of things, where these guys are going from top scoring options on their team, and how could they look as complementary pieces at the next level? Somebody could have thrown out Jalen Wells out of Washington State as a sleeper last year's draft, and he has fit perfectly on his team this year over in Memphis. And like Cam Spencer had a nice moment the other night against Phoenix, and these guys that can go late in the draft can really at least turn your franchise into a little bit of a deeper roster, have a better younger core. I mean, OKC hit on Aaron Wiggins with like the 55th overall pick. He had 30 points the other night when Shea was out and like when J-Dub was out. So a lot can go down from now to the NBA draft, and a lot can change. So if you guys think that these are already top 30 prospects, maybe you're just a little bit more into the weed of things that I think the casual audience is, or just like an overview. I think I just really want to talk about these guys because they're really fun college players. Let's get into it. First guy, Micah Peavy over there at Georgetown. Man, shout out to Georgetown just being, I think, a little bit more exciting of a team this year. They in the past have not been good under Ed Cooley, who left Providence and is now over there at Georgetown. Who I'm trying to like just also have like the tournament plays up on my right here. Like Georgetown does play DePaul on tomorrow on Wednesday, and like you never know if they can make a run. But Micah Peavy, man, fun player to watch this year. So he started out at Texas Tech back in 21. He's a 5-year college player, spent the last 3 years at TCU, and this year had a really fun two-man game with a first-round prospect that I'm sure you've heard of a bunch in Thomas Sorber, who did suffer a season-ending injury. But PV has a very good-looking form on his jumper. He shot 39% from three this year, and his three-point shot has been getting better and better over his career. Like when he came onto my radar early in the year, I was like, what was this guy like at TCU? Because TCU hasn't really been too relevant in a little bit in the terms of the college basketball sphere. And he shot 31% from three last year. The form looks fantastic this year. He played a ton of minutes, was a very good two-way player. And I think that's going to be a theme for a lot of these sleepers. Guys that I think could be great off-ball and help defenders at the NBA level, on the perimeter, at the point of attack, and that could also be good three-point shooters. PV could turn the ball over a lot, but he was pretty much the main focus point of the Georgetown offense on the perimeter. He shot 47% from the field, 40% from three. He averaged 5.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 2.3 steals as well. Can get in the passing lanes. 215 is his weight, 6'7", like a little bit of an older prospect, but I think is somebody that could be a great complementary piece, and that's worth taking a flyer on in the second round. I think the handle could play. I think it needs a little bit of work, but somebody has just like a 3-and-D piece for you. Now, I don't want to say that he's going to be a great three-point shooter. The form looks good. The catch and shoot numbers were fantastic, but this was his first year in 5 years of college basketball where he shot above 31% from three. And he also has not been a good free throw shooter, a career 60% free throw shooter in college basketball. That's abysmal, right? So it's not a guarantee that his shot is going to translate to the next level, but I think either on a two-way contract or a late second round pick right now, that is worth it. And who knows, maybe he goes off against DePaul, maybe he ends up playing very well against Creighton in the next matchup, and he can kind of make a name for himself. And I'm sure he's going to go to the combine in May, and I think he's like the first guy I want to talk about as a sleeper for this draft. I've been a big fan of just kind of a lot of these Big East teams this year. Like St. John's is going to get a lot of the attention, but Georgetown just being a little bit more competitive this year was a lot of fun to watch. And then like Xavier, we'll get into an Xavier guy later on, I believe. Next up, we got Isaiah Evans of Duke, probably the best school we're going to talk about. We do have another player from a top 10 program right now, but Isaiah Evans, I think, is a popular draft sleeper because I think either there's a chance he can go back to Duke for his sophomore year, or there is a chance that he just kind of goes off in the tournament and honestly could play himself into a first round pick, because I think right now picks 20 to 30 are very up in the air for the NBA draft. And I think just having somebody that is going to be projected to be this good of a shooter. Just the catch and shoot, the off-ball movement, the pull-up shots have looked fantastic. And it was really one sample size this year, or one stretch, where it was this 4-game stretch that we saw at the end of ACC play. It was so weird that Illinois game. But Virginia, Illinois, Miami, and Florida State, 17 points, 17 points, 16 points, 19 points. And he shot 52% from the field, 53% from three, 72% from the free throw line. And I think you're really just trying to take a look at his shot and how that's going to translate to the NBA level, because it looks very good. He's been a good free throw shooter. He was a top recruit. He was 16th in the RSCI top 100 last year, but Duke has been flooded with talented freshmen and obviously some transfer guys and some veterans on that roster. But I think 6'6" for somebody that could be a 2-guard in this league, like, maybe not Cam Thomas type, but I think somebody that's got some size on him, definitely needs to put on some weight, has to get better defensively, but I think could be a very fun shooting prospect in this draft. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had a really good ACC tournament or a good March Madness, because Duke is going to be a 1 seed. There's a chance they're going to at least play, right? Like 2 games. I can't see them losing in the round of 32. You never know, though. It is March. But if Isaiah Evans at least gets 4 to 5 more games under his belt, and we could see that 3-point shot being a little bit more consistent, man, or like the defense improved, I think he can work his way into being a first-round pick just because of the upside long-term. And it's tough, too, because he's not a focus point of this offense. Now, he gets great looks because the defense has to be worried about Con Knipple and Cooper Flagg and Proctor and Kaman and Sion James. So Isaiah Evans can generate very good looks, but I think it's tough for him to get into that rhythm because he's not able to create his own shot that much at times this year. So I think Isaiah Evans, I would take him in the second round 100% right now. I would think long and hard about the top 40. I think there is upside for sure. And I think if your teams like Orlando or Houston that need some shooting, there is great upside on using a second round pick or even a late first. Like, there's a chance if you're looking at the shooters and like Cam Jones is off the board, Alex Caravan's off the board, and I'm debating between like Isaiah Evans, or I'm just going to like throw up guys that are in the consensus right now for the late first round. Like, you're looking at LeBaron Philon or Isaiah Evans, or you're looking at Ian Jackson or Isaiah Evans, or Adu Thero, who's not really the best 3-point shooter in the world, or Isaiah Evans, and you're a team like Orlando, I think I would draft Isaiah Evans over those guys right now because of the need at shooting. And I think, like, I don't know, I think like I go back to like Dariq Whitehead, and I thought his game was going to translate so well to the NBA level, but he was kind of derailed by injuries. I think Evans is a very safe shooting prospect in this class. Next up, we're going to go to Washington State, where I briefly mentioned them earlier, and because they had Jalen Wells last year. We're going to talk about Cedric Coward, who hasn't played much this year. Only 6 games, suffered an injury back in November, but he was good last year for Eastern Washington. He's been good for most of his college career. So we have a 72-game sample size. It sucks he was hurt this year for Washington State, but I like the 3-and-D upside for Cedric Coward, as he's somebody that's a 6'6", 190-pound guard / forward hybrid, but he's been a very good shooter for most of his college career. 39% from 3 on 1 attempted game for Eastern Washington back in 23, 4 attempts per game. Shot 38% from 3 in 2024, and then in 2025, in just a small sample size, took 5 attempts and hit 40% of his threes. But he's got a very good mid-range jumper as well. He can move, like, kind of dribble to the lane and then maybe take a step back 3, a little bit of a push-off 3, kind of like similar to what Ace Bailey works on at Rutgers or Trey Johnson works on Texas. And I think there could be some upside for Cedric Coward as a second-round pick. Definitely, I would use a 2-way or get him as an undrafted free agent. I mean, I got to learn more about kind of like the injury and what it's going to look like. I mean, if you've been following Cedric Coward, you can kind of know about what he could be long-term or how the injury does look. But I think there's a good enough sample size. And those 6 games this year were pretty exciting. I mean, he had a really good game against Northern Colorado. Maybe it's not the best competition in the world. He had a good game against Bradley in Eastern Washington. He did struggle against Iowa, which you could say is like the best team he did face. But I think he's got the ball handling and the shot making where it's at least an intriguing, I don't know, pick in the second round for Cedric Coward. And I think there's going to be teams that have so many second rounders. Why not take a flyer on him? So, yeah, Cedric Coward suffered a season-ending injury. I just want to get the injury right. He had season-ending shoulder surgery. I don't know, like, what scouts prefer. Honestly, if it's a season-ending injury, like, are you more scared of a leg injury? Are you more scared of a shoulder injury? Because how could that affect your shot long-term? But I think Coward does have that offensive potential to use in like maybe the back half of the second round right now. Don't be surprised if you heard his name called, especially if he's healthy enough for workouts or the combine. Next up, I've been calling him a sleeper all year, and they're one of the best storylines because they've been an embarrassing program like under Kenny Payne for the last few years. Shout out to Pat Kelsey getting ACC, I believe, Coach of the Year. Chucky Hepburn of Louisville. He could be this year's Jamal Shed in a way, and type of that defensive point of attack prospect, because he is a fantastic defender. And I was like, all right, he's on my radar right now because of the defense. But man, that offense has been kind of killer as of late. I'm just pulling up where Louisville is in the ACC tournament. So they get the bye and they're going to play like the winner of Stanford, Virginia Tech, or Cal. Yeah, like we're going to see a decent amount of games. And I think Louisville's going to have no issue making the tournament. Like it doesn't matter what happens in the ACC tournament. Hepburn this year, 16 points, 3.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 45% from the field, 35% from three, 85% from the free throw line. He spent the last 3 years at Wisconsin, who had a lot of roster shuffling last year. He goes to Louisville, and he's exploded on the scene as an offensive prospect. He's gotten better at the rim. He's gotten as consistent with his three-point shot. He was great as a sophomore for Wisconsin, but I will take 35% from three on 5 attempts tonight. It's just the point of attack defense. He is everywhere. He can go baseline to baseline, and he can guard you the whole length of the court. He can get into passing lanes. He can just steal it like at the point of attack, guarding you straight up, and then you can get transition buckets off of that. And I think like I always knew that he was going to be one of the best guard defenders in this class, and that's why I would definitely use a second round pick on him. I don't think he's going to creep his way into the first round because you worry about the size at 6'2", and you worry about how consistent that shot can be. But that game against Pittsburgh, who I think have been disappointing this year for sure. But man, 37 points, 81% from the field, he didn't miss a single three, 6 of 6, 2 steals. I don't know, like I do want to pull up the ACC all defensive teams because I believe he's got to have been on an ACC all defensive team, right? I mean, so many guys can make these now. He was on ACC all first team with Cooper Flagg, Maxime Reynaud, who I don't think is a sleeper. That's why I didn't have him here. I think you can have like Chase Hunter here. Yeah. So I just wanted to pull up he didn't get any defensive player of the year votes. Oh no, he did win defensive player of the year in the ACC. Yeah. Chucky Hepburn won it. So yeah, his defense is definitely more known, I think, on the national stage now. I'm surprised Cooper Flagg didn't win it. But either way, Hepburn was fantastic on both ends of the floor. Big reason why Louisville is going to be playing in mid-March. So next up, we got Max Shulga of VCU. He's a 3-year player at Utah State and then ends up playing the last 2 years at VCU. And I'm going to do a very, I think, lazy comp here. Reminds me a little bit of Cam Spencer. Maybe not like the shit talking as much as Cam Spencer, but just an older prospect that could play off of 2 feet, that can hit very contested threes, that can get his teammates involved, that can finish at the rim. And VCU has been the best team in the Atlantic 10 this year, which is a respectable conference. Like, we've mentioned Rasheer Fleming on the podcast, who's playing for St. Joe's. Like, they were the 6th seed, and Rasheer Fleming could be a top 15 pick in the draft. Dayton's a very good team. George Mason this year. St. Louis with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Robbie Avila. But yeah, Shulga, he hit some of the toughest threes I have seen watching him this year at VCU. 44% from the field, 41% from three, 78% from the free throw line, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. He's from Ukraine, which is pretty cool, coming over, his game translating. And it's just like you can see 1 point at Utah State as a freshman, 4 points at Utah State as a sophomore, breaks out, and then spent the last 2 years at VCU. And he has been a very good 3-point shooter. I mean, not the greatest defender in the world. There's definitely going to be some lapses there, but Cam Spencer, I mean, I don't think his defense was going to be that translatable coming out of UConn. And I think just if you need shooting in this class, I am looking at shooting in the second round. There's teams that have a plethora of second round picks. I'm looking at you, Orlando, if you're picking in the mid 40s. I'm looking at you, Chicago, in the mid 40s. Utah in the late 40s. Even the Clippers, they have the 50th pick right now via Minnesota. I would like to see Max Shulga on this team. Phoenix at 56. Orlando has Boston's second round pick. If it's one of the last picks in the draft, I'm taking Max Shulga out of VCU because I think I'm getting, at the worst, a 36-37% 3-point shooter to come off the bench to play 8-10 minutes a night. I will take that. Who can hit very tough shots, who I don't think needs to get in that rhythm of, okay, I got to be involved all game, and then my 3-point shot is going to be consistent, and it'll be fun in the fourth quarter. No, I think you can bring him off the bench with 6 minutes left in the third quarter, and he can knock down big-time shots for you. So I think as a ball handler, he's fantastic. He can get his teammates involved. Doesn't turn the ball over for his usage as well. And I think, like, his usage, can I see this? 22%, like, very high, and he turned the ball over 1.6 times a night. He does not turn the ball over. Good court vision. I like him as a playmaking prospect in this draft. Next up, we have Jeremiah Mashack, up there, Tennessee with Duke is like some of the best teams in college basketball this year. Okay, so Mashack's interesting because Chaz Lanier, Zakai Ziegler are going to get a ton of the attention. and rightfully so. Meshack only averaged 6 points this year as a senior for Tennessee, but man, is he a very good defender. And he shot 38% from three on one attempt a night, 1.5 attempts a night, 47% from the field. Incredibly physical. He had that game winner, I believe, against Alabama. That game winning 3. He had 11 points in that game. And he's just, I think, one of the best defensive prospects in the second round. And he's someone that could switch on to multiple, he can guard multiple positions, switch on multiple defenders. He's going to guard the pick and roll at a very high level. Now, it does help. He's playing with Ziegler and Wayner and a very good defensive team out there at Tennessee, but I think you could put him into that Memphis Grizzlies system in the second round, the Cleveland Cavaliers system in the second round. Indiana has a second round pick, and I'm very intrigued about Jahmai Meshack. I'm not looking too deep into the points per game numbers. It's just the way he was involved this year in the Tennessee offense, and it works, and I'm excited to watch him play at Tennessee in the SEC tournament. They are the 4 seed, so they may not play till, March 14th, so what is that, Saturday? No, Friday, we're going to see him play in the SEC tournament. They're going to be playing in March Madness. All eyes are going to be on Ziegler and Wayner, and I think, I go back and forth between Wayner. I think Chaz Lanier is a little bit better of a prospect than Zakai Ziegler, but they're both interesting for sure. It's just Lanier was definitely more efficient. Actually, yeah, Ziegler's not a prospect. 5'9", I forgot he was that short. But yeah, Chaz Lanier could definitely be a sleeper, but I think in terms of just calling somebody a sleeper, Meshack, I think, fits that mold a little bit more because he's not really the talk of the town over there outside of the Tennessee universe. So he's my, what did we mention? That was number 6. We've talked about Micah Peavy from Georgetown, Isaiah Evans from Duke, Cedric Howard from Washington State, Chucky Hepburn from Louisville, Max Shulga from VCU, Jahmai Meshack from Tennessee. Next up, we have Dalen Swain from Xavier, another Big East member. Not as good of a three-point shooter as some of the guys we've talked about, but somebody that can be efficient at the rim, get to the rim. He's got good court vision, and I think is a plus defender right now. And I think, we've talked about a lot of seniors, super seniors, guys that are going to be 22, 23 on draft night, maybe close to 24. Swain is just a sophomore at Xavier right now. So I think out of all these guys, he has a chance to return. I think Isaiah Evans has a chance to return. I think Isaiah Evans would be a clear top 45 pick. Swain, I think it would be tough for him to be a definite second round pick, but I think I'm looking at him long and hard as a developmental guy if you are going to use him late in the second round, because yeah, second round picks can be these 23-year-olds. How much better can they be? Swain, being a sophomore, I think is worth it, who has been a very productive player, very competitive Xavier team this year. Somebody that, like I said, can navigate ball screens, attack closeouts, has a good mid-range jumper, and can get to the rim. And I think that would only get better and better. Last year, he was coming off the bench for Xavier as a freshman. This year, he started 30 out of 31 games for this team. 10 points, 5 rebounds, 1.5 steals a night. Not much of a three-point shooter. Maybe if he stays and then his three-point shot could get a little bit more effective, he just doesn't really take them, then he can really help out his draft stock as a junior next year. Who knows? Maybe he leaves in the transfer portal, and I'm sure could get a nice offer from a UConn or St. John's, as these guys, or especially St. John's. Patino is looking for that RJ Lewis replacement, Kadari Richmond, and not really looking for the high school guys. I don't know how Xavier fans will feel about that, but Swain, I think, is an interesting prospect in the second round just because of his age, his ability to attack the rim, and his ability to play defense and guard multiple positions. 6'7", 200 pounds, I think could be a lanky 2-guard in the NBA. Next up, we have Jameer Watkins of Florida State, somebody that I think is also a very good defender. This has not been a fun year for Florida State whatsoever. Florida State is the 11th seed in the ACC tournament. I believe Hamilton, their coach, ended up getting fired. He was getting sued earlier in the year. But Watkins was consistent last year for them. I believe I remember watching him at the Combine in Chicago. He goes back to Florida State. He spent his first 2 years at VCU. This year, he averages 18 points for the Seminoles, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.2 steals, 42% from the field, and 32% from 3. The three-point shot has been falling a little bit after the start of the season, but I do think Watkins is an interesting 3-and-D prospect. I know I've been saying everybody's interesting, but that's what I brought these guys to the table because I think they're worth looking at in the second round, or looking at with your undrafted pick, or an undrafted free agency signing, or a two-way selection. And Watkins has the size, man. I think he can get downhill. He can finish at the rim. He's got a good ball handle for somebody at 6'7", and I think he can really finish at the rim. And maybe he's not a good three-point shooter, and that brings his field goal percentage down a little bit. Most of the mocks I've seen do not really have him as a top 60 prospect. Like, I like him over, like, I think Hunter Salas. I mean, maybe Xavier Lee over there at Princeton. Like, you have Eric Dixon. I like him more than KJ Lewis, I think, is a prospect. And these are guys that are, like, consensus top 50 guys. So, I think Watkins is worth looking at. I mean, Florida State plays Syracuse. I think they'll win that game. I mean, they could definitely upset SMU, but it's going to be tough to get past Clemson there. In the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament. So we may not get to see Watkins play that much anymore of college basketball. Next up, we have Kobe Brea of Kentucky. Kentucky's had a lot of injuries as of late. But Brea, I think, could take, like, I don't know if he's the best shooter in the draft, but I think he's a top 5 shooter in this draft. I think you look at Isaiah Evans. I think you look at Con Knipple. I think you look at the potential of Liam McNeely as, like, these pure shooters in the class, like Caravan in a way. But yeah, Brea, 4-year player at Dayton, goes to Mark Pope this year at Kentucky, 11 points per game this year. I mean, Kentucky just gets everybody involved. 44% from the field, 44% from 3 after shooting 50% from 3 last year for Dayton, 46% from the field. He's 6'6". I think the defense could improve as well a little bit. I think light, got to get in the weight room if he's going to guard these shooting guards and small forwards at the NBA level who are very physical, who want to get downhill. He's got to be able to cut them off and slide his feet, but he is, I think, as safe of a shooter as you can get. Another guy that I don't really see in the second round in mock drafts from The Ringer or The Athletic or ESPN right now, and I'd rather have him over some of the lottery ticket, like, international guys, like Markovic from Megabasket. I'd rather have Kobe Brea. I guess it really just depends what your team is looking for, but man, I've talked about teams that need shooting, and you're looking at maybe it's the Wizards in the second round, or you're looking at Houston or Orlando, where you're just trying to get a little bit cheaper and find these guys that could shoot high 30s, low 40s from 3 in a specific amount of volume. Kobe Brea could be that guy who's going to play in big time moments this year for Kentucky, who I believe is okay. So Kentucky, they did not get a bye. Where are they in the SEC tournament? I'm just trying to pull this up right now. They're the 6th seed, so it's crazy how good the SEC is this year, but they'll be playing in March Madness for sure. They've just had some injuries. I know Jackson Robinson is out for the year. Somebody else was out for the year, but Amari Williams also intrigues me as a prospect. I didn't have him, like, as official guy here, but a 4-year Drexel player, comes over to Kentucky. 6'10", I think, is, like, maybe not the biggest center out there as a transfer or as a big man prospect, but he can crash the glass very hard, got a very high motor, super competitive, and I think is very polished at the rim. So I think Amari Williams is worth mentioning. Next up, we have Bennett Sturts, who I think is now getting more of a national look. What he's doing at Drake this year as a junior. I don't really know much about him before this time period, but Drake lost, I believe, Robbie Avila was there last year, right? And they lost their, or am I thinking of Tucker DeVry? I think I'm thinking of Tucker DeVry. Where was Robbie Avila last? Or he was at, like, Indiana State. I'm thinking of Tucker DeVry, who you could also mention here for West Virginia, like, coached by his dad, but suffered injury this year. We look at Bennett Sturts, though. I mean, I guess if you want to talk about Cam Spencer's, like, he could be that guy. Once again, lazy comp, but he is so much fun to watch. And Drake is going to be playing in March Madness, and he has been incredible this year as an offensive talent for Drake. Playing 39 minutes a night, started every single game for them, 19 points, 2 steals, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 49% from the field, 38% from 3, 80% from the free throw line, can get to the free throw line, can get downhill, can play off of 2 feet, can navigate ball screens, can attack closeouts. He's got a phenomenal ball handle, and he is a high volume, high efficient shooter. I think Bennett Sturts should be a 100% second round pick right now, and I think his draft stock is only going to get better. I know the defense, like, it might not be the best. He might not be the most athletic player out there, but we're just seeing, like, Cam Spencer, I mean, who's not, like, the best athlete by any means, especially of the guys that went last year. He was picked in the 50s. And if you could just get somebody that plays hard, maybe could talk a little trash talk, can get the team going, can maybe just change the energy of a game, kind of like Jose Alvarado, who's undersized, and what he could do for New Orleans. Like, Sturts is 6'4", he might be 6'3", but he's a very good shooter. He's way more polished than Alvarado offensively. Alvarado was more the defensive prospect, and I think Sturts is just going to be one of the more talked about players of March Madness, and I think deserves some love for a mid-major team of Drake, because, yeah, I don't really see him in any of these mocks. I just, like, I don't know. He excites me a ton as a prospect, and I know Miles Byrd has a little bit more size and defensive potential. I think they should be pretty close. I think so too. And then lastly, we have Yaxel Lendenberg of UAB, who's been one of the best scorers this year in the American. UAB was in March Madness last year, and Lindenberg was a part of that for sure. He comes here as a senior now, and he started every single game for them. 54% from the field, 33% from three, 17 points, 2 blocks, 1.6 steals, 10 rebounds a night. He is 6'9", but he also is like a stretch 4 prospect, and I think that is so valuable because he can guard not just 2s, but 3s and 4s. Maybe can even guard a 5 at a pinch because he is very physical, and that's what I like about Lindenberg's game a ton. As a potential first-round pick, I think he's maybe one of the highest like value guys that we're going to talk about here. Like, I don't see him in the first round, but he's usually like a top 45 guy, top 40 guy. And he just, like I said, plays hard. He's going to be very physical inside, can crash the glass, is going to rebound very well, can play make a little bit, and was the best player on UAB this year. UAB wasn't as good as they were last year in the American. I'm just pulling up the American tournament right now. Like UAB, they are the 3 seed, in the American. They are going to play on Friday, March 14th against the winner of, I believe, UTSA and, what is that, East Carolina? Yeah, my Temple Owls are going up against Tulsa, and then we're going to get Charlotte. Or no, not Charlotte, North Texas. Yeah, I don't know. Temple kind of fall off a little bit. But a lot of their losses were close this year, but I don't think Jamal Mashburn is really going to be a prospect here that we're going to mention, even though maybe he goes on a run. But yeah, I think Lindenberg is definitely worth a fringe first-round pick right now. And then the last person I do want to talk about, I mean, Chase Hunter has been very fun this year as like a 3-and-D guard for Clemson. And I think like is maybe in a similar tier to Chucky Hepburn. He's played 6 years of college basketball, though. Wow, he's been at Clemson since 2020. That is crazy. I didn't realize that. Man, I mean, yeah, like he's older. So obviously it's like, how much better is he going to be at the NBA level? But I think could go on a nice run with Clemson this year. So we talked about a ton of guys. We talked about, I guess, briefly Chase Hunter for Clemson. We talked about Yaxel Lindenberg for UAB, Bennett Sturtz of Drake. We ended up talking about Kobe Brea of Kentucky, Jameer Watkins of Florida State, Dalen Swain of Xavier, who could go back to school, Jemai Mashak of Tennessee, Max Shulga of VCU, Chucky Hepburn of Louisville, Cedric Coward of Washington State, Isaiah Evans of Duke could also go back to school, and Micah Peavy of Georgetown. So let me know what you guys think about those draft sleepers. Were you on their radar for a while now? Are you just learning about these guys? Or maybe there's a sleeper that I didn't mention that you can let me know in the YouTube comments or the Spotify comments, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, and you can send me maybe just a message on Twitter about these guys that I didn't talk about. So yeah, I'm very excited for conference tournament to play. I was going to do like conference tournament predictions. I think I was just like going to make a whole video or episode on that, but I think I could just kind of rattle them off here, honestly. So like the ACC tournament, I think I like Florida to win the ACC tournament. I mean, I guess I meant to also mention Elijah Martin of Florida. He was somebody that I wanted to bring attention, like high energy, high intensity, 4-year player at Florida Atlantic, comes over to Florida. Like I said, can hit big time threes, can go on a run, could be a microwave scorer for you, and can guard multiple positions. But once again, like 6'2 guard, 180. What's the value at the NBA level for that? But I do think Florida can win the SEC. The Big Ten, I mean, Michigan State, I think, is peaking at the right time. I think Michigan State can win. I still think, like, Purdue or Illinois could go on a run, or Wisconsin. I think I like Wisconsin more than I like a UCLA right now. I mean, shout out to the Crab 5 in Maryland. But, yeah, I'll go Florida for the SEC, Michigan State for the Big Ten. The Big 12 also could be a little bit up in the air. I do like Texas Tech. Kansas has been such a disappointment this year. BYU could be a tough matchup as well, but I'm going to go with the 1 seed Houston Cougars. And then the ACC, can I take UNC to go on a run? No, I'm going to take Duke, so another 1 seed there. So kind of chalky picks. The Big East, I don't think St. John's is going to win it. I think I'm going to go with UConn to win. I mean, Creighton's an interesting team as well, but I think I'm going to go, like, I think Villanova could make a little bit of a run if Eric Dixon could just put the team on his back with Luka Poplar, maybe Kyle Neptune fighting for his job. But I'm going to go with 3-seeded UConn. In the Mountain West, I mean, Colorado State. This is the Nick Clifford show, but also shout out to the Lobos, New Mexico, with Richard Pitino. And then the A10, I mean, I talked about Max Shulga, really like watching him. I think them or Dayton, it's probably going to be one of those two teams. And then the American, I got to go with Temple to somehow get into March Madness. I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the Just Ballin' podcast. If you did, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Really helps the podcast grow. I'll catch you guys in the next one.